Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day is out in theaters, and I've had a chance to watch it. Not only that, but the fourth batch of UAP files have been released by the Pentagon. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more today on the Walk Talk Solo Edition.
Welcome to Walk Talk, the Faith in Motion podcast, where two regular guys talk about their walk with Christ. We're not pastors, we're not priests, just passionate followers of Jesus, here to give an account of the hope that lies within us. We don't shy away from the tough topics or the challenging scriptures. We just share our faith, and we hope that you find it helpful. We're your hosts, Randy Dupree and PJ Verdon. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, so I've had a chance to go and watch the new movie by Steven Spielberg, Disclosure Day. And I'll just say up front that it was a good movie. It was good. It was entertaining. I wouldn't say it was a great movie, but it was definitely very entertaining. A little different than what I thought it would be going into it. It's essentially a chase movie. It reminds me of a movie like what is it? Enemy of the State. Yeah, so it's like from the very beginning, you got bad guys chasing good guys, and the chase essentially starts a few seconds into the movie, and it continues throughout the entire movie. So I'm going to go ahead and play the trailer for Disclosure Day and kind of talk through some of my thoughts through the trailer, and then give you a little bit more about my thoughts after the trailer.
What did you steal?
Secrets. The data they paid me to protect.
Are they people?
Okay, so I'm gonna pause it right here because right away you have something I liked about the movie, and something I didn't like about the movie. So one thing that you're seeing right now that I liked about the movie is I love how they showed crop circles being made. The dude is just standing in the middle of a field and the crop circle just forms around him. I thought that was super cool. Right before that, you saw his girlfriend asking, "Are they people?" This is 2026. No one who sees a video of 3-foot tall beings with large heads and large eyes and very small mouths are going to ask, "Are they people?" She actually started by asking, "Are those children?" Then she asked, "Are they people? Are they human?" No one's going to ask that question. Not in 2026. People are going to assume they're probably aliens.
No.
Good morning, Kansas City.
Steven
Let's
Spielberg,
take a
he's been
look.
part of the Disclosure for decades.
Let's
Emily Blunt does a great job in
is
this movie, by the way.
today's
She speaks several languages in this film, including whatever this
Do you
clicking
understand
sound
what
is,
she's
and
saying?
she
I
sounds like
hear
she
it's
speaks it
gibberish. I
natively.
can't understand it.
And I can.
what's happening to me.
People are starved for the truth. I'm a part of it now. I'm just sorry they made you a part of it too.
Hello, Jane.
Okay, this scene here is essentially how they are, in my opinion, showing what demon possession could look like. Because what you have here is you have this guy who is part of the Men in Black, the pseudo governmental organization who are chasing our protagonist, right? And he's sitting in one room, but he's using alien technology to essentially enter the mind of someone who is in a totally different state. And not only does he enter their mind, but then eventually controls them. So we'll talk more about religion and faith a little bit later. But in my opinion, this is Steven Spielberg sort of saying, hey, maybe demonic possession is nothing other than alien technology being used to control a human being.
Please. Have a seat.
See, he's not really there. She just sees him as being there.
This 79-year terror campaign of lies has to end.
Roswell.
What are you gonna do?
So there's a lot of Easter eggs in this movie and a lot of callbacks to the whole UAP, UFO conspiracy theory rabbit hole, right? There's a whole lot of stories that you may have heard if you followed this topic for any amount of time, and a lot of them are referenced in this movie.
Full disclosure to the whole world.
That truth will upend all established order across the entire world. If you do this, there's no undoing it.
All right, so this is one of my, I'll stop it right here. Let's see. Right here. Okay, so this is one of my pet peeves in this movie. Okay, so essentially it's a chase movie. That's what the movie is all about. Bad guys chasing the good guys. And one of the things that frustrated me the most about the movie, yes, there's some small little quirks, like everyone's going to look at this video and know it's an alien, or at least even if they don't know, they're going to maybe assume. They're definitely not going to ask, is it human? That just seems ridiculous to me. But then you have several scenes. I think there were at least 3 different scenes in this movie where it seems like the protagonist forgot that they were being chased, that their lives were at risk. This is one of those scenes. So I don't want to say too much and spoil the movie for anyone, but you could see what's going on here. You could see that our protagonists are being pushed into a train. Okay, what you don't see is right before this scene, they were escaping from a military base. They have the bad guys are pursuing them. They get to this railroad crossing. The train is not coming yet. The arm comes down and they stop. Okay, I'm probably not going to stop for arm coming down. I'm probably going to drive around the arm even if nobody's chasing me. But they stop at an arm even though the train is still, I don't know, 30 seconds away from them, maybe. They stop at this arm as if they have all the time in the world, only for this to then happen. It does make for one of the more exciting scenes in the movie, though.
Why would they do this?
When the time is right, everything will become
This is
clear.
basically showing alien abduction, starting as children and then going on throughout our protagonists' lives.
Whatever happens,
Don't you let it go.
That scene there is a video that is being shown to people around the world. This is not something that happens in the movie. So one of the things that I was looking for going into this movie was I wanted to see, like, not just disclosure in terms of, government officials saying, yes, this UAP thing is real and alien life exists or whatever it is real. But actually, when I seen like this trailer for the first time, I thought, oh man, these aliens are going to make themselves known. And they do, but not in the way that you think from watching the trailer. So, my general thoughts again, I think that this was a good, entertaining movie. I thought that it was a fun movie. I thought that if you like action movies, especially action movies that involve a chase sequence that essentially lasts the entire movie, then it's a great movie. You definitely feel like you're on the edge of your seat throughout the entire film. There's not really a dull moment throughout the entire movie. It's a little different of a movie than what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more focused on revealing what the government knows to the world, and then maybe a little bit of the, I don't know, the consequences of that. Instead, what it's really all about is you have your protagonist who steals essentially some data files from this pseudo governmental organization, the Men in Black. I'll just call them the Men in Black. He steals these files from the Men in Black, and then he's essentially on the run from them from before the movie even starts, as they're trying to get those files back and then probably take him out as well. But instead, he uses alien technology that he steals along with the files to get away from them, and then he's just on the run. And eventually, he meets Emily Blunt's character, who is a weather meteorologist in Kansas City, and they essentially team up to share the files from her news station to, to humanity, to the whole world. And so, and without saying too much else, that's the main plot. So that's really what the movie is all about. Now, I will say that, as we've talked about before here on the Walk Talk, I personally think that aliens are actually is spiritual. I think that aliens are spirits. I'm not going to go as far as to say they are demons, but I definitely would say they are demonic. If we have angels and we have demons, then we have the two main categories of the spiritual beings that are, outside of humanity that have been documented throughout the Bible. I think that there are other entities outside of just those two categories that maybe get lumped into those two categories, like principalities and powers and things like that, which I think that there's a lot smarter people than me who have dug really deep into this, who really make it clear that there is more than just angels and demons, and that I think that's something that's worth diving into. But I would say that, in my opinion, I do still think that aliens are demonic. And so I think that we are in a disclosure right now. I believe that disclosure is happening. I don't believe that disclosure is going to be a single event where the president of the United States or someone else, stands before the world and says, here's what we know about aliens, and aliens are real. However, that may come at some point. I believe that disclosure has been ongoing for years, and the release of the UAP files by the Pentagon, I believe, is part of that disclosure. It's very funny that in this movie, the protagonist is on the run with a USB drive, a thumb drive full of files, and we've been literally getting releases of, of files from the government before, during, and after this movie was released. No telling how many of those drops we're going to get, but we did just get the fourth one, which we'll take a look at here in a minute. But I just want to remind everybody that the reason why I think it's important to even talk about this topic is I do believe that in Matthew 24, when Jesus talks about the great deception, he talks about how we're going to know we're in the end times. No one knows the day, no one knows the hour, but we will know when we are in the season, because there's going to be signs. And Jesus tells us in Matthew 24 what some of those signs are. And one of the things he says is there's going to be a great deception, and there's going to be a turning away. And he even says that if possible, even some of the elect are going to be deceived. And so, whatever that means to you, I don't want you to be deceived. I don't want my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ to be deceived. I don't want my children to be deceived. I don't want my family to be deceived. I don't want to be deceived, and I don't want you to be deceived, because if at some point in the near future some government official gets in front of you on TV, on a podcast, on whatever social media you follow, and they say, yes, aliens are real. They're from whatever Alpha Centauri, or name your place, and they are the ones who actually created humanity. Either they seeded Earth millions of years ago, or they came here and they found primitive primates and genetically engineered them into humans for whatever purpose. I, people are already saying things like that. People are already saying things like, when the truth comes out, it's going to destroy religion. People already are saying things like religion was created by aliens to control humanity. Okay, so when you hear that coming from a president, a congressperson, whoever, I don't want you to be deceived. I want you to have already thought about this. I want you to have already been in your word. I want you to have already prepared your mind and your heart for that falsehood that I do believe is going to be coming, if you haven't already heard it, because it's already being kind of put out there a little bit. So that's why I'm talking about this today. This is why me and PJ have been discussing this topic on several occasions. It's because we do want to make sure that if there is an attack on our faith, that no one is caught off guard. Because even in this movie, and like I said, it was a good movie. I didn't see anything like overtly negative or evil about the movie. They definitely side on They definitely land on the side of, hey, these things that we've been seeing in these videos and that the government's been tracking are definitely aliens. They definitely have technology. They don't really get into where they come from or anything like that, but they definitely side on their aliens, right? And they definitely, make it clear in the movie that it's all just a cover up, that the government doesn't want the world to know because they're worried about the disruption it's going to cause. Part of that disruption, they talk about religion a little bit. You might have seen in the trailer, there are nuns that are shown in the trailer. They actually go, is it a convent? Is that what they call where the nuns live? I'm not sure. But they actually have a conversation where one of the main characters talks to a nun and basically says, like, hey, what if aliens are real? What does that mean for our faith? And the thing I like about it was they essentially land on the side of, look, our God is bigger than we could ever imagine. If there is life outside of this planet, God created it. So that part I thought was positive. The part I didn't think was so positive was they misquote Genesis, and they don't name a chapter or verse, but they misquote Genesis and essentially say that the Bible says that humanity is God's supreme creation. The Bible doesn't say that we're God's supreme creation. In fact, it makes it pretty clear that we are lower than the angels. The Bible explicitly says that we are lower than the angels. So that to me is a twisting of scripture. If for no other reason, it could be very well just to discredit the word of God or to shake people's faith. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, the positive side, at least they acknowledge that, hey, if there was alien life, God's big enough to have created it, and he must have a plan for them just like he had a plan for us, which honestly is kind of where I fell for the majority of my life. That's kind of where I saw things. I kind of saw that, hey, I do believe that what most people are seeing and capturing on videos and the experience that a lot of people have claimed to have had is real. Which tells me that aliens must be real. They must be coming from somewhere. Maybe they've been here a long time, but they must be real, and our God is so big that he must have created them and he must have a plan for them. That's where I used to fall. That was before I started to really, get into the ancient texts and like I said, listening to people much smarter than myself, start to really understand the spiritual world, not only as the Bible describes it, but even as, the second century or first century Hebrews understood it. Not getting into deep esoteric texts or anything like that, but just, getting into other books that are not considered canon but were quoted by Jesus, quoted by the disciples, quoted by some of the prophets in the Old Testament, which do give more of a detailed explanation to some things that are in the Bible that we don't get a lot of explanation for. And a good reason for that could very well be that it was just so known and understood at the time that the Bible didn't, the writers of the Bible didn't need to go into detailed explanations. And some of those things get into more of what the heavenly realms and the spirit world is all about. And so, with all that being said, I would definitely fall more on the side of thinking that aliens are some sort of demonic presence, some sort of spiritual presence. Can they become physical? Yeah, I definitely think just as we are physical beings who have a spiritual nature to us, I think that angels, demons, that whole spirit world, the Elohim, um, they are spiritual but have a physical nature as well, just like Jesus did in his resurrected body, right? He was a spiritual being who ate and drank, but also was able to seemingly walk through walls and mysteriously appear, in random places, almost as if he was teleporting or something like that. So there was definitely something going on with Jesus in the spiritual body where he had a lot more of a spiritual nature to him, even though he still expressed physical attributes. And I think that that's exactly what has happened throughout history. When I read in Genesis about the sons of God essentially taking the daughters of men to be wives and having children with them, that tells me that there's a spiritual being that has some physical elements to him, and they must be able to, um, at will, be more or less physical for them to do things like impregnate women. and then there's their offspring and the Nephilim, and the Bible doesn't get into that in a whole lot of detail, but we've talked before about like the book of Enoch, which does, and there's other ancient traditions that get into that even more. And so I say all that just to say, look, I really don't know the answer. I really don't know what these things are. I do think there's something demonic to it, and I definitely think that it's going to be used as part of this great deception to try to lead people away from Christ in the end. And I definitely do think that we are in that season. We are in that season. The things that Jesus said to look out for, I believe we're seeing them. The things that Revelations talks about in terms of what's going to happen in the final judgment, I think that that is unfolding. And I think that if nothing else, Christians should just be aware and be prepared. Not that we should live in fear, not that we should be worried, not that we should be concerned. God is in control, but we should know, we should be aware of the tactics of the enemy if we're going to be prepared and be able to stand up and keep our faith through them. Okay. So that's kind of my thoughts on Disclosure Day. Again, I would recommend it, but just, go into it knowing, what it's all about and how it's potentially being used as part of a bigger plan. All right. So last week, the fourth Pentagon release was given to us with a new batch of files. So I'd like to take a look at some of the videos. So here are some highlights from the latest Pentagon release of the UAP files. So again, these files, some of them are PDFs, some of them are images, some of them are videos. Here are some videos. Now, in this particular image here, I just want to recognize that these videos, a lot of them are black and white, a lot of them are grainy, a lot of them look like they're coming from some sort of military sensors, infrared cameras, things like that. However, this being the fourth batch, I have noticed that some of these videos have gotten a little bit more clear and a little bit more detailed than the previous three. And you'll notice in some of these that we've gone from in the first batch where there was like a lot of orbs, for example, to what now looks more like solid objects with features that are distinguishable. This is a good example here. Even though we're kind of still zoomed out, you could see some definition to these things. And the interesting thing is, most of these videos aren't showing anything that looks anything like the typical flying saucer, disc-shaped craft. Not even a lot of the triangular or more pyramid-shaped objects that have been reported. A lot of these are really hard to describe. They look different than anything. This looks like, to me, this looks like two little squeaky ducks stacked on top of each other, at least from this distance. And then they kind of change as they're moving. The shape of them seem to sort of change a little bit. So I really don't know what to make of some of this. One thing to consider is, it's still possible that some of these things are completely man-made objects from other countries around the world. And some things might be, and if they are man-made objects, they could very well be things that are made from just human invention. They could very well be things that are made from demonic influence. And I'll talk more about that in a minute here, but people have said that we have been gifted technology, that humanity has retrieved crafts, that the U.S. government actually has a formal craft retrieval project for, when these things crash, going and collecting the debris and reverse engineering them. Some people have said that that's how these things exist. Some people have said that it's been given to us by non-human intelligence. And that second part there implies not just a crash retrieval, but essentially information, knowledge being passed on. Okay, this one's hard to describe, but you could see that this definitely looks more like a physical object, not like a glare, apparition, or any sort of orb. It looks like a physical object. A lot of these in this recent batch do. There's that same one again. This was just 3 years ago, over the Yellow Sea. That one to me sort of looks like a traffic light. Your normal traffic light, red, yellow, green. That's kind of what it looks like to me, just kind of floating in the air. It's very, very odd. And then let's see here. I'm gonna skip ahead to one that I think has been getting the most attention. This one, I guess they're calling the brain. Let's see here. People have said it looks like some sort of floating brain. Okay, it's zoomed way out. It's gonna start to zoom in here. At one point, this one looks, it looks kind of like someone in a mask. Yeah, see, this one's called the floating brain. But as they zoom in a little bit, it kind of looks like a face to me. See, there looks like two white eyes with a black mask around it, kind of looking to the left. Almost looks like a hat, like a Zorro. Look, to me, it looks like a Zorro face. And then the more it zooms in, it kind of looks like a floating pig with something hanging from it. Like right there. Right there. Yeah, let's see if I go back just a second. Right there. You can kind of see, to me, it looks like a pig looking to the left right there with like something floating underneath it. I don't know. And there's been renderings online where people have tried to add more detail to this image to show what this potentially might look like at higher resolutions. Um, but yeah, this is the one that I think is getting the most attention right now. I think it was the second batch. We had the star. It was like an 8-pointed star shaped thing that was getting a lot of attention, which some people said they were pretty sure that it was actually a flare, that some sort of military exercise where they have a flare attached to a parachute. And honestly, I kind of looked at the video and said, yeah, I could see that. It does look like it could be a flare shining at night. And I kept seeing like this rectangular thing floating around the star, which could have been a parachute. Yeah, I mean, it could very well be a very conventional explanation for some of these, and just, no one's really dug into them deep enough to really figure it out. Something like this, however, I don't know. I mean, without having all the information, without looking deep into the files to see the size and distance and things like that, I mean, this could very well just be like an inflatable balloon. I don't know. But then you start to look at how it moves and how big it is, and you start to rule things out. Then you're like, well, what is this thing? I don't know. I don't know what it is. But this is the fourth batch of files that has been released. The last thing I'll say is there might be a lot of people who say, okay, well, you seem to think that these UAPs are spiritual because they are demonic. You keep saying that they're demonic, or you know, they're 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 from a spiritual realm. How do you know, how does that mesh with the fact that there have been physical samples and in even some of the videos released by the Pentagon They seem to look very physical. Well, I would say that we know just from what the Bible says that these beings do have a physical component. Just like we are physical beings that have a spiritual component, the Bible makes it very clear that angels are spiritual beings with a physical component. The Bible tells us that we should be kind to strangers because sometimes you might be interacting with an angel. What does that mean? That means that they're going to look very physical. They're going to look very physical. They're going to look very much like someone you could touch and have a conversation with, and maybe actually can touch and feel and can interact with things physically, open doors, things like that. So if they're physical, might they not also be able to create objects that are physical? That's a crazy thought for most people. Jesus, after the resurrection, seemed to have elements that were physical and non-physical. He seemed to be able to walk through walls and just appear instantaneously in various places. But he also ate, and Thomas touched the holes in his hands and felt him, and it seems like he was real, physically real, even though he also had this very spiritual aspect to him, to where he could move around instantaneously, where he could pass through things. The only way I could think to explain it is, like I said earlier, we're physical with the spiritual nature. Maybe these angelic beings, whether they are angels, fallen angels, also known as demons or Nephilim or what have you, maybe they are spiritual that also have a physical component to them. And maybe they have the ability to become more or less physical as they at will. Maybe they could at will manifest more physically or less physically. I don't know. There's also there's also this whole idea that before the flood, there were advanced civilizations here on the earth. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but you could look at things like the ancient astronaut theory. You could look at Graham Hancock's work. There's a lot of evidence from the Great Pyramids. All around the world, there are pyramids to megastructures, literally all over the planet. There seems to be evidence that there was an advanced civilization here on this planet. Some people have said that they think that those are aliens from another planet. Some people think that somehow, primitive human beings created all this stuff. I tend to think, you know what? I think it was probably a pre-flood civilization of spiritual beings who created most of this stuff. I really do. And maybe what we're seeing, and one of the reasons why I call this stuff demonic and not necessarily demons, is maybe what we're seeing is the remnants of their technology and things that were built by these beings that survived the flood somehow, or are now being rebuilt by humans with the guidance and influence of demonic entities. Now, I know that sounds pretty crazy. That seems pretty extreme, but we have these theories, we have these legends, these myths that have been passed down for thousands of years. Um, like the city of Atlantis, right? For example, probably the most famous one, which was basically the city. The story is of a lost civilization that was drowned out in a flood, and the whole continent is now under the ocean. But these were supposedly very advanced beings that had technology beyond what we even have today, that quote unquote angered the gods and were wiped out. And they're not the only ones. There's other stories of other civilizations like Atlantis. Now, this is not a conspiracy podcast. I'm not trying to go down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole. All I'm saying is there are explanations out there that do make logical sense. Which ones are true, which ones are false, I don't know. I don't claim to know. All I know is there are lots of different thoughts out there of what the world has looked like over the eons that it has existed, that honestly, in my mind, would make a lot of sense if some of these were true. And the one that does ring the most true to me is what we're seeing today is of demonic influence, the same demonic influence that created these legendary mythological civilizations that were wiped out by the flood. And now, as we approach the end of days, as we approach the judgment of the earth, they're coming back with a vengeance to deceive and to lead people away from Christ. So don't let that be you. Keep your faith, stay in the word, stay in prayer, and regardless of what you're told by the news media or by any government officials or by anyone else, just know that God is in control. Jesus Christ is Lord. He died for your sins, and all you need to do is place your faith, hope, and trust in the finished work of the cross, and you will be saved. God is not an alien. Jesus is not an alien. He is the eternal creator of the entire universe. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's Jesus. So put your hope and faith in him, regardless of what you see. Go watch movies like Disclosure Day or stream it when it comes out. It's a good, entertaining movie. But again, don't be deceived. Don't be confused. Keep your faith in God. That's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. God bless.